When you look at the character Darth Vader, it's hard not to jump to conclusions. He's a monster, a machine, maybe even pure evil. And that's how things were supposed to be in the original trilogy. George Lucas didn't want any questions about who was good and who was evil. And with his black suit, crimson lightsaber, and ominous breathing, Vader certainly made it quite clear. But what if I were to tell you he was more than just a villain? What if Darth Vader, for all of his power, wasn't just a person to fear, but a person to pity as well? In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at one of the most popular villains of all time. And I'll not only show you that he should be the one true best villain of all time, but I'll also show you that he's completely misunderstood. Welcome to Vader, Slave to the Galaxy. To truly understand the character Darth Vader, you have to accept one fact as an absolute truth. No matter where he's been, or how old he was, he's only ever had one true master. It's not Darth Sidious, it's not Watto, it's not even Obi-Wan Kenobi. Vader's true master has been, and always will be, the Force. The Force has had control over Vader even before he was born. And that is due to the fact that the Force is actually what created him. During the time of the Republic, the Jedi were multiplying rapidly and spreading their influence across the galaxy. And now, that may not sound like such a bad thing, but even as good-hearted as the Jedi could be, their mission was never to multiply and spread. They were meant to be the servants of the Force's will. And all the Force wants is balance between light and dark. So, when the Jedi created this imbalance between light and darkness, the Force took it upon itself to correct this error. And to do this, the Force used the assistance of two Sith Lords. As the Jedi were slowly losing their way and moving further from what their true mission was, two Sith Lords were conducting experiments in the shadows. These two incredibly powerful Force users were Darth Plagueis and Darth Sidious. Together, they were attempting to manipulate midichlorians and create a powerful Sith warrior. They came close to achieving this goal, but the Force desired something different. Instead of allowing the Sith weapon to be created, the Force took these midichlorians and placed them inside Shmi Skywalker. And so, due to the ingenuity of the Sith and the will of the Force, the Chosen One was born. But unfortunately, this isn't the beginning of an epic tale about a hero born to save the galaxy. This is a tragedy. The sad story of a child born shackled to a destiny he did not choose. You see, the Force did not create Anakin just to be kind. The Force needed a tool to bring balance to the galaxy. It needed a servant to do its every command, regardless if he wanted to or not. So, because of that, Anakin Skywalker was born into slavery in more ways than one. Now, there were a few points where the Force's control over Anakin could have been broken, where he could have branched off and forged his own path. And in saying that, it makes these two events the most important in Star Wars history. The first event is Anakin's upbringing. It's by no mistake that the Force chose a woman suffering as a slave to be Anakin's mother. They could have put those midichlorians in anyone, but they wanted their chosen one to be born into pain and suffering. This wasn't a punishment or to be cruel. It was used to help sculpt Anakin's personality as he got older. You see, Anakin's time as a slave is why he couldn't, or more likely wouldn't, act like the quote-unquote perfect Jedi when he was older. During Anakin's time under the control of Watto, he learned a few things about himself. He learned that he wanted to be an individual, not just another face in the crowd. He also learned what true freedom is, and how much he despised people who would take that away. And he also learned that he wanted to help people who had suffered like he had. All of these painful lessons Anakin learned as a slave would eventually make him struggle under the confines of the Jedi Order. When he arrived, he found the Jedi Council were afraid of him, didn't trust him, and at times, despised him even. So, they attempted to make him just another no-name Jedi roaming the halls of the temple. They also tried to take away his freedom by imposing rules and regulations upon him that limited what he could or couldn't do. And the worst thing for him was, he discovered the Jedi Council prioritized their own agendas over actually helping people who truly needed it. Now, if Anakin never had his experiences as a slave on Tatooine, he may never have had these issues with the Jedi Order. He may have conformed to what the Council wanted and just became another average Jedi. But, unfortunately for him, this wouldn't get the Force what it wanted. So, into slavery Anakin was born, and then when the time was right, he was handed off to the Jedi and forced to feel like an outcast. The second major moment that could have changed Anakin's life forever was the duel between Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan and Darth Maul. Now, if you don't believe me, you can ask the Clone Wars director Dave Filoni, who has also stated this as a fact. You see, both Dave Filoni and I see that this battle involving these three powerful Force users wasn't just about the fate of Naboo. The winner of this duel would be the person to train Anakin. Now, we all know what happened when Obi-Wan was victorious in the duel. But what if Maul had won? Perhaps Anakin would have fallen into the hands of the Sith, or have even been killed. That's an interesting question, but I think even more important than that is this question. What would have happened if Qui-Gon Jinn had won? I personally believe something drastically different could have happened for Anakin. Qui-Gon Jinn wasn't the typical Jedi. He wasn't afraid of knowledge or emotion like the others. He was also one of the few Jedi that could see that the Order was collapsing. If he would have survived, he could have been the relaxed father figure Anakin needed, rather than the harsh and rigid brother Obi-Wan became. Qui-Gon would have accepted Anakin's flaws, and most likely even his marriage to Padme. So, if he had lived, Anakin may have never been pushed to the dark side. Unlike most of the Jedi Order, Qui-Gon saw Anakin as a person, rather than a weapon. So just having that one caring presence could have prevented the fall of the Jedi and Anakin's seduction to the dark side. But, as cool as it is to hypothesize what would have happened to Anakin if Qui-Gon survived, the Force would rear its ugly head again and intervene. It saw to it to have Qui-Gon killed by Darth Maul, and further isolate little Anakin from anyone who truly cared about him. This was a truly important death. It was because Anakin felt so alone that he was such an easy target for Darth Sidious to corrupt. His insecurities, his jealousy, and his desire for freedom proved to be his downfall. Once Anakin had fallen, and Darth Vader rose from the ashes, his true servitude would begin. As Anakin Skywalker, he had the opportunity to help people, to form friendships and bonds with those around him, all while serving the Force's will. But once he became Vader, that was all gone. He lived in misery, with no friendships, no happiness, only servitude. As Vader, he was forced to do things he never thought he would. Hunt Jedi, murder, torture, and who knows what else. The Force required true balance, so Vader would ravage the galaxy and extinguish any trace of the Jedi Order. And he would do this as a passenger. As much as Anakin was a flawed individual, and his fall to the dark side was partially his fault, his actions as Vader would have never been his as Anakin. So, he had to watch as a spectator while his body did these atrocities. All the while, he also had to mourn the death of his wife. She was the person he loved most in the galaxy, yet he couldn't truly mourn her as he was the one to have killed her. Vader suffered under this loss and the guilt that came with it until his last day. But she never could have been allowed to live. The Force saw her as the one thing left in his life that could have brought Anakin back to the light. So, Vader was forced to remove her from the equation. This is not all he had to endure. Physically, Vader was destroyed. After his battle with Obi-Wan, his limbs were gone, and his lungs, eyes, and skin were scorched. Now, with the technology of the time, Vader could have been given artificial limbs much like Luke, and given a smaller, more comfortable breathing apparatus. But, unfortunately for Vader, he didn't get to design his own suit. That job fell to his master, Darth Sidious. You see, Sidious was furious at Vader for failing to kill Obi-Wan, and he couldn't believe he had lost so much of his connection to the Force after losing all of his limbs. So, he designed a suit with a twofold purpose. The first purpose was to punish Anakin for failing. Sidious made his suit heavy and uncoordinated. This would make it difficult for him to move and fight, and make it more likely that he'd die in combat. The second purpose was to increase Vader's power. Ironically, Sidious achieved this goal by making his suit agonizing to be in 24/7. It had razor-sharp pieces inside that would cut him every time he moved. His artificial limbs were old and outdated, and would pinch his exposed burned skin and cause him discomfort at all times. And, to make it worse, the technology in the machine was made to be extremely loud, so he could rarely sleep or think uninterrupted. All of these things were done to infuriate Vader. By keeping him in a constant state of pain and frustration, Sidious was pushing him further and further into the dark side. And Sidious hoped the more Vader connected with the dark side, the more power he would recover. And Sidious was successful with this goal. Vader was forced deeper into the dark side, and he drank it in like poison. The more he ingested, the stronger he became. Now, it's true, he was never going to be as strong as his potential was when he was Anakin Skywalker and had his limbs fully intact. But he did regain a good amount of strength by going deeper and deeper into the dark side of the Force. Vader was made to suffer like this, along in many other ways, because the Force commanded it. This is where you start to realize how unfair it all is. Anakin is compelled by the Force to do its bidding. And when he does everything that's asked of him, the Force still sees fit to punish him. Vader would live like this for years, further blackening his soul and being forced to endure unimaginable pain. That is, until the Force needed one last thing from him. Or should I say, it required the thing from him, the thing he was born to do. This occurred on the second Death Star, when Vader decided to bring himself back to the light and kill the Emperor while saving his son Luke. This was the moment he was created for, the moment he truly brought balance to the Force and fulfilled the prophecy of the Chosen One. But once it was done, once Vader performed his final act, the Force decided it was time he rested. So without any time to see his daughter, to right wrongs, or to enjoy the life he was forced to abandon, he was taken away. Now I know most of you are going to say, but didn't he right the biggest wrong and destroy the Sith in the end? But what about everything else he had done? Don't you think, knowing Anakin, he would have wanted to do more and to help more? I'm not writing this to say George Lucas should have ended the story differently, because I think it was done perfectly. I'm just trying to highlight, even in death, the world was not fair to Anakin Skywalker. In the end, we know Anakin finds his way back to the light and becomes part of the living Force. And most people are happy to say, hey, all's well that ends well. But I don't think we should let this happy ending take away from the things that he had to endure in his life. Anakin Skywalker was a good person, with dreams and aspirations like the rest of us. But he was forced to watch them burn, all in order to create a peaceful galaxy that he would never live to see. The truth is, the Force isn't good or evil. It's a living thing that helps the galaxy stay together. It never thought about the wants or needs of Anakin Skywalker, nor did it ever see his treatment as cruel or unfair. But maybe it's time we the fans did. Both Anakin and Darth Vader are powerful beyond measure. But what good is that power if it comes at the cost of your freedom? I mean, even with all of his power, Anakin would be forced to live out his greatest fear, living his entire life as a slave. And the sad thing is, he probably never even realized it until his final moments. That, my friends, is Vader, slave to the galaxy. I hope to shed some light on just how interesting a character Darth Vader truly is. I really enjoyed making this one, and I hope you guys had a good time watching it. If you did, please remember to like and subscribe. Also, please get the conversation going in the comments. I love talking Star Wars, so please let me know if you agree with my thoughts on this character, or maybe you disagree. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you next time on the third floor.